Imagine this. You're a dad visiting your daughter's school for a surprise lunch. You expect smiles, maybe even some laughter, and a proud moment to share a meal with her. But what if that simple lunch visit turned into something you'd never forget? Something that would leave you feeling alarmed? Let's get to know our dad, a caring, devoted father. He shares a close bond with his young daughter, a girl full of energy and excitement. He's the kind of dad who knows her favorite color, her go-to snack, and just can't resist that little smile of hers. Today, he's planned a surprise trip to her school, hoping to catch a glimpse of her world, and most importantly, her reaction when she sees him. It's just a simple plan. A lunch visit to brighten her day and maybe make a fun memory. But as he steps into the school cafeteria, something feels strange. It's not the friendly, bustling atmosphere he expected. Instead, there's a certain tension in the air, something that's hard to explain. At first, he tries to ignore it, brushing it off as just his nerves. But as he looks closer, little details begin to stand out, details that don't feel right. The lunch being served looks unappetizing, almost unsettling. He wonders, what could be so wrong with a school lunch? Little does he know, this visit will quickly turn into a quest for answers, one that will push him to make a choice no parent ever wants to face. But before we begin, like and subscribe because we upload stories daily and comment from where you are watching. Anyways, let's get back to our story. The drive to his daughter's school is filled with warmth and excitement. He's already picturing her face lighting up when she spots him. There's pride swelling in his heart, knowing his little girl is growing up, making friends, and learning new things every day. He chuckles to himself, imagining her gasping in surprise and tugging him over to meet her friends, proudly introducing her super dad. As he arrives, he parks, takes a deep breath, and steps out with a big smile. Inside, he greets the receptionist, who returns his smile warmly. He's a familiar face here. Everyone knows him as the dad who goes the extra mile to be there for his daughter. Passing a few teachers, he gives them a friendly nod and even exchanges a few words with the janitor. This place feels almost like a second home for his daughter, and that thought fills him with comfort. But as he walks further down the hall, a slight unease creeps in. At first, it's just little things. The kids seem quieter, not their usual lively selves. Some have their heads down, almost like they're hiding. The teachers, though busy, carry a certain tension on their faces, a hint of worry he can't quite place. He shakes it off, trying to convince himself it's just in his head. As he moves closer to the cafeteria, that odd feeling grows stronger. The hallway, usually filled with laughter, seems strangely silent. When he glances at the cafeteria staff, he notices something else. They're avoiding eye contact, hurrying about like they'd rather not be seen. It nags at him, making him uneasy, but he reminds himself, this is just a school. What could go wrong? Finally, he spots his daughter through the cafeteria doors. She's in line, waiting for lunch, unaware of his presence. For a moment, the unease fades, replaced by pure fatherly joy. There she is, in her own little world, and he treasures this glimpse into her life outside their home. But as he steps into the cafeteria, his smile fades. The air feels heavy, filled with a smell that's not quite right. It's hard to place, a strange mix of stale and metallic scents. He watches as the kids line up for their food, noticing how many of them hesitate, glancing at their trays with scrunched noses and furrowed brows. His daughter is one of them, and the happiness he felt just moments ago begins to disappear, replaced by a creeping sense of concern. Determined to keep things light, he walks over, ruffles her hair, and sits down with her. She beams up at him, surprised but clearly thrilled. But as they settle in, his eyes drift back to her tray. The food looks off. It's grayish with a texture that doesn't quite resemble any food he's familiar with. His daughter picks at it, taking the tiniest bites, and he feels a pang in his heart at the thought of her having to eat something like this. Trying to make light of the situation, he asks, "So how's the food here?" She hesitates, looking down before mumbling, "It's okay, I guess." That small, hesitant response sends a chill down his spine. Suddenly, all those odd little details he noticed, the quiet kids, the tense staff, the uneasiness in the room start to come together. It's not just off, it's genuinely troubling. His instincts kick in, and he feels a deep need to protect his daughter. This was supposed to be a simple lunch, but now he's on high alert. He knows he needs to get to the bottom of this, and he's prepared to do whatever it takes to keep his daughter safe. As he watches the cafeteria staff, he picks up on more unusual details. They move quickly, almost robotically, barely making eye contact with the kids. Their faces are blank, and they seem to ladle food onto trays without any care, like they're just trying to get through the motions. There's a strange, almost hidden tension in their movements that doesn't feel normal for a place meant to nourish children. He glances down again at his daughter's tray, noting how colorless the vegetables look, limp and lifeless. The main dish, a type of stew, has a gray hue that makes him frown. Trying to stay calm for his daughter's sake, he can't ignore the gnawing feeling that something is seriously wrong. The smell in the air only adds to his discomfort. There's a faint metallic scent mixed with the usual cafeteria aromas that feels unsettling. He shifts uncomfortably, glancing around to see if anyone else is reacting the same way. But everyone seems to be in their own little world, almost as if they're afraid to acknowledge what's happening around them. He decides to take a bite himself, just to see if maybe he's overreacting. But the moment the food touches his tongue, he feels a deep sense of disgust. It's tasteless, with an odd aftertaste that lingers unpleasantly. Swallowing, he feels his concern spike. He can't sit here any longer. He knows he has to do something and fast. His instincts scream at him that something's wrong, something that goes beyond just a bad meal. Looking down at his daughter's hopeful eyes, he realizes he may have to take drastic action. This wasn't the day he had planned, but he's ready to do whatever it takes to protect her. With his decision made, he puts his arm around her, feeling a sense of calm determination. Whatever's going on here, he won't stop until he finds out. For his daughter's sake, he'll make sure that this simple lunch was anything but ordinary. They approach the counter, and he takes a closer look at the kitchen area behind it. He notices trays stacked messily, with leftover food bits from previous servings still clinging to them. The countertops have a few old spills left to dry, and it doesn't look as clean as it should. The cafeteria workers keep their heads down, moving quickly as if they don't want anyone noticing them. He leans down to his daughter and quietly asks, "Is the food always like this?" She hesitates, glancing up at him before nodding slowly. "It's okay," she says softly, but her voice carries a hint of discomfort that he can't ignore. He knows his daughter well. She's trying to hide something unpleasant, but he can see right through it. As he inspects the food more closely, he notices a strange, oily shine on the stew that just doesn't look natural. The vegetables give off a faint, stale smell he hadn't noticed at first. Something about the whole setup feels wrong, as if the food isn't even holding up under the cafeteria lights. Other kids walk by with their trays and he watches their reactions. Most of them look reluctant, poking at their food instead of eating it. A few cast quick, disappointed glances at the staff but don't say anything. It's clear they're used to this routine, even if it doesn't sit well with them. As his daughter takes a tiny bite, his concern deepens. Her face scrunches slightly, but she quickly swallows, trying to hide her discomfort. His protective instincts kick in hard. This isn't just bland cafeteria food. Something is very wrong. The condition of the food, the staff's behavior, the kids' quiet reactions, each piece adds to a picture that becomes more unsettling the longer he watches. Determined to understand what's going on, he moves closer to the serving area, examining everything in detail. The ladles used for serving rest in a cloudy liquid, and pieces of food have spilled onto the counter and been left there. The trays being handed out have chipped edges, and some even have dried food stains. These aren't just little oversights. They're signs of neglect that shouldn't be in a place serving children. With every new thing he notices, his worry grows. He manages to catch the eye of one of the cafeteria staff and gives her a questioning look. She glances at him for a second, but then quickly looks away, focusing back on her task. The silence from the staff, the questionable food, and the feeling that something's very wrong start to weigh heavily on him. As he stares down at the food on his tray, his heart starts to race. The more he looks, the more disturbed he feels. He lifts the tray, bringing it closer to inspect each item. The stew has tiny flecks that look out of place, like bits of dirt or something foreign. The color is murky and grayish, definitely not what fresh food should look like. It's as if someone just threw things together without caring about what kids would be eating. He carefully touches the vegetables. They're mushy, almost slimy, like they've been sitting out too long. When he brings a piece to his nose, the faint smell he noticed earlier is much stronger now, a sour, stale odor that makes his stomach churn. He scans the tray again and picks up a slice of bread, only to see mold starting to grow on the edges, faint green spots that are unmistakably there. A chill runs down his spine. This isn't just poor quality cafeteria food, it's a health risk. The idea of his daughter or any child eating this sits heavily in his chest. Every detail around him becomes sharper, more troubling. The cracked trays, the lack of cleanliness, the silent, hurried staff. All these things he hadn't noticed in his excitement to surprise his daughter now form a disturbing picture. He catches the eye of one of the cafeteria workers, a woman in her 40s, moving briskly from one task to the next, never looking up. His protective instincts flare. Stepping forward, he gestures politely but urgently to her. "Excuse me," he says, holding up the tray. "Can you tell me why the food looks like this?" His tone is controlled, but the worry in his voice is clear. The woman barely glances at him, her face blank. "It's just what we have today," she mutters in a low, dismissive tone. "Just what you have?" he asks, his voice rising slightly, drawing the attention of a few nearby kids. "This food is spoiled. There's mold on the bread and the stew. It's unrecognizable. Are you even checking what you're serving?" She briefly looks at the tray before turning away, her expression almost indifferent. "We serve what we're given," she replies flatly. "If you have complaints, take it up with the administration." His frustration rises, a mix of disbelief and anger. How could anyone serve this to children and brush it off so easily? Now he's more determined than ever. "I don't think you understand," he insists, his voice firm. "This isn't about a complaint. This is about the safety of these kids." He points to the stew. "What's in this? What ingredients are you using? And how old is this bread?" She gives him a look of irritation. "I told you," she says sharply, barely looking at him. "We serve what we're given." By now, more kids are watching, some whispering to each other. The father takes a deep breath, not wanting to cause a scene but knowing he can't let this go. He looks around, hoping to find someone else who might be willing to help. Just then, a man who seems to be the cafeteria supervisor approaches, his face tight with concern. "Is there a problem here?" he asks, glancing between the father and the staff member. "Yes, there is," the father replies firmly, holding up the tray. "This food isn't safe for these kids. The stew looks spoiled, the vegetables smell off, and the bread is moldy. I'd like an explanation." The supervisor's expression changes, looking defensive. "Sir, we're doing the best we can with what we have. This is a public school cafeteria, not a fancy restaurant." The father's anger rises. "This isn't about gourmet food, it's about safety. These kids deserve better than this." He gestures around the room. "Look at them. They're barely touching their food, and the few that are eating look unhappy." The supervisor's face hardens. "We've never had complaints before. Maybe your standards are just a little high." Frustrated but still determined, the father presses on. "High standards? This isn't about high standards. This is about basic health. Would you want your own child eating this?" The supervisor shifts uncomfortably, his eyes dropping for a moment. Seeing this, the father softens his voice but remains firm. "Look, I understand that resources might be tight, but that doesn't excuse serving food that could be harmful. If you can't offer safe meals, then at least give these kids something that isn't spoiled." The supervisor's face tightens, ready to respond, but the father cuts him off, frustration boiling over. "I'm not letting this go. If you can't address this, I'll find someone who will." The supervisor straightens, his tone turning defensive again. "We follow the guidelines set by the district. If you have an issue, take it up with them." Realizing he's getting nowhere, the father takes a deep breath to calm himself, though inside his anger and worry are growing. He thinks of his daughter, the reason he came here in the first place, and all the other kids who rely on this cafeteria every day. There's no way he's letting this slide. With a determined look, he meets the supervisor's gaze one last time. "Fine," he says. If the administration won't take responsibility, I'll make sure someone does. Without another word, he steps away, pulling out his phone. The staff members exchange uneasy glances as he heads toward a quiet corner of the cafeteria. He dials, his hands steady, and his mind set on what he has to do. He came here for a simple lunch with his daughter, but now he's faced with a serious problem, and he won't rest until these kids are safe. As he waits for someone to pick up on the other end, images of what he just saw replay in his mind. He's about to take a stand, not just for his daughter, but for every child here. He knows this call might be the start of much-needed change. Fueled by a mix of frustration and concern, the father strides toward the school's main office, his mind racing. The unsettling images of the cafeteria meal flash in his head. The murky stew, moldy bread, and stale smell. His protective instincts are on high alert. This wasn't just a bad meal, it was a serious health risk, and the idea of his daughter, along with other children, facing this every day is simply unacceptable. Reaching the office, he takes a deep breath to steady himself, but there's still an edge to his voice. He addresses the school secretary, who looks surprised by his urgency. "I need to speak to the principal," he says firmly, his eyes serious. The secretary senses his determination and gestures him into a small office where the principal is waiting. The principal, seated behind a desk stacked with papers, looks up with a polite smile, though it fades as she sees his expression. "How can I help you today?" she asks, her tone polite but a little wary. Without wasting time, the father begins, "I just had lunch in the cafeteria with my daughter, and what I saw was disturbing." His voice is steady but filled with restrained anger. The food being served isn't just unappetizing, it's unsafe. There's mold on the bread, strange particles in the stew, and an overall staleness no child should be exposed to. The principal listens, but her face remains calm, almost detached. She nods politely. "I understand your concern," she starts, her tone even, "but we follow the district's guidelines on food preparation and safety. Our cafeteria staff works hard to meet those standards." The father's frustration builds and his voice rises slightly. "Guidelines? Standards? I don't care about policies if they're letting this kind of food reach children. This isn't about preference. This is about health and safety. My daughter and every child here deserves better." The principal keeps her calm, but there's a hint of defensiveness in her eyes. "Sir, we haven't received any other complaints, and as far as we know, the food meets nutritional requirements." The father takes a deep breath, struggling to keep his frustration in check. "Maybe no one has complained because they haven't seen what I saw. If any parent saw today's lunch, they'd be just as outraged." Silence fills the room, the tension thick. The principal's expression shifts slightly. "We do the best we can with our limited resources. If you feel strongly about this, you should take it up with the district. They set our budget and our menus." Realizing he's hitting a wall, the father feels a surge of helpless anger. It feels as if his concerns are being brushed aside, reduced to a matter of resources instead of the health of the kids. His daughter's face flashes in his mind, and the idea of her facing this meal every day makes his heart ache. He stands, a new resolve growing inside him. "Fine. If you won't take this seriously, I'll find someone who will. I didn't come here to argue policies. I came here to protect my daughter and every other child in that cafeteria." The principal watches him, a flicker of discomfort crossing her face, but she says nothing. Without another word, he leaves the office, determination burning within him. As he steps into the hallway, his mind is clear. He's going to take action. For too long, it seems, the school has accepted poor food quality, hiding behind budget constraints and policies. But today, the father has had enough. He realizes this isn't just a simple complaint. It's a call for real change. His next steps are clear. If the administration won't act, then he'll make sure the proper authorities do. Driven by love for his daughter and a sense of duty to protect every child here, he understands this situation calls for drastic measures. As he steps out of the office, he's no longer just a concerned dad. He's an advocate, ready to do whatever it takes to keep these kids safe. Standing outside, he takes a deep breath, his phone gripped tightly. His mind replays the disturbing scene from the cafeteria, the moldy bread, slimy vegetables, and the administration's dismissive attitude. Part of him still can't believe it. What was supposed to be a happy visit with his daughter has now turned into a difficult decision. Should he handle this alone or involve the authorities? He paces for a moment, wrestling with his options. Reporting a school feels drastic, but then he remembers his daughter's uncomfortable expression as she picked at her lunch. If he walks away now, he'll be letting her down, and every other child in that cafeteria. With one last steadying breath, he makes his decision. His hand doesn't tremble as he dials 911, feeling the weight of what he's about to do. When the call connects, a dispatcher's calm voice answers, 911, what's your emergency? He hesitates, gathering his thoughts. I, I'm at my daughter's school, he begins, his voice low but steady. The food they're serving the kids here isn't safe. It's moldy, stale, and could be a serious health risk. The dispatcher picks up on his urgency. Sir, are there immediate medical concerns? No one's collapsed yet, he replies, but the food looks contaminated. I need someone to come here and see this before anyone gets sick. Understood. Can you give me the school's location? He provides the address, his words spilling out faster as he adds, I spoke to the administration. They don't seem to care. They're more concerned about budgets than kids' health, but someone needs to step in. These kids eat this every day. The dispatcher pauses, processing his words. I'll notify the health department and dispatch a unit to your location. Please stay at the scene. As he hangs up, a mix of relief and tension washes over him. He did it. He took action. But doubt creeps in. What if he's overreacting? What if this call backfires? Still, he recalls that cafeteria, those kids, and his daughter's hesitant look. No, he's certain he made the right choice. Minutes stretch on as he waits outside, his decision weighing heavily on him. The school seems peaceful from where he stands, but he knows that inside, kids are lining up for lunch, unaware of what's about to happen. There's an odd stillness in the air, broken only by the faint sound of approaching sirens. A police car and a health department vehicle pull up, sirens now silent. The officers step out, exchanging cautious looks as they spot him by the entrance. His heart pounds as they approach, and he repeats his story, this time face to face, with the urgency of a father desperate to protect his child. As he speaks, he notices their expressions change from mild skepticism to genuine concern. One of the health inspectors assures him, "We'll investigate this immediately." He watches as they enter the school, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. He's taken a drastic step, one that may bring backlash or resentment from the school. But the thought of his daughter and every child eating unsafe food is more than he can bear. Inside, the cafeteria quiets as the inspectors and officers make their way in, their serious expressions cutting through any sense of normalcy. The father stays near the entrance, observing as his heart races, anticipation and worry swirling inside him. The health inspectors approach the food line, scrutinizing each item carefully. One inspector lifts a spoonful of stew, eyeing its odd grayish color and texture. Another inspects a slice of bread, flipping it over to reveal faint traces of mold along the edges. They exchange grim looks, jotting down notes, their pens moving quickly across their notepads. Meanwhile, the police officers speak quietly with the cafeteria staff, asking pointed questions. The staff appear nervous, glancing at one another, their earlier indifference replaced with visible discomfort. The officers ask about food handling practices, cleanliness, and ingredient sources, but the staff's hesitant answers only deepen the concern. The father stands by, feeling the weight of the situation settle over him. This wasn't just a complaint. It's a necessary step toward change. He doesn't know what the future holds, but he's certain of one thing. He won't rest until these kids are safe. As the inspection unfolds, the health inspectors uncover trays with stains and old food bits left behind, surfaces that should be clean. One inspector points to a dirty ladle left out in the open, and the officers exchange worried looks. Each new discovery confirms the father's concerns, yet it's unsettling to see just how bad things truly are. He hadn't expected it to be this shocking. He thought it might be some negligence, but seeing the conditions laid out this way is disturbing. He watches the inspectors' faces, seeing their quiet disappointment and anger. It's clear this issue goes beyond just one bad meal. The problems here are deeper, and that realization weighs on him. Finally, the lead inspector steps forward, giving the father a firm nod. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention," she says, her tone serious. "What we've found here is unacceptable. We'll report this right away to make sure things are corrected." The father feels a wave of relief, knowing he did the right thing by speaking up. But as he leaves, the images of those unsanitary conditions linger in his mind, along with the knowledge that his daughter, and so many other kids, had been exposed to this every day. It's a bittersweet moment. He's grateful action is being taken, but he's haunted by how far it had to go before anyone noticed. Days later, real changes are announced. The school promises to improve its food quality standards and will keep parents informed with weekly updates on cafeteria conditions. It's a small victory, but it brings peace of mind to the father, knowing his persistence has made a lasting difference for every child at the school. If you liked it, please like and subscribe as we upload daily stories for you. Thanks.